Good evening and welcome to the first Inside Government show for the fall 2020 semester here at Cayuga Community College. This is a show that's broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as WIN 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. Due to COVID-19 and the worldwide pandemic, our show has changed a bit since having to stop filming back in March of this year during the spring semester. But we are delighted to be back in the studio for this semester. With new health protocols and SUNY directives, we are only doing one show per taping versus doing an Inside Government and a Beyond the Front Page back-to-back. Instead, we'll be doing one on Tuesdays and one on Thursdays of each week. And it also includes that we'll only have one guest in the studio at the time. As a reminder, there are college students who direct, produce, and tape these shows, and we're front-loading our schedule this year to start in September rather than the end of September, early October, going into December, so we can finish in advance just in case there's another outbreak. We'll finish around Election Day in early November. There'll be more of an update on what shows are coming up in a few minutes, but we want to get to our guest first. He's in his 13th year as the mayor of the city of Auburn, and that's Auburn Mayor Michael D. Quill. He has, with the exception of re-election years, he has graced us as the first show each semester since he was elected, so we'd like to welcome him back in the studio. We're going to talk a little bit about the city's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the city's new fire station that is built on Seminary Avenue, the $10 million downtown revitalization initiative, better known as DRI, reconstruction of South Street, and a lot of other projects. So that while COVID may have stopped a lot of us all meeting together, it hasn't stopped moving on projects. Welcome back.
Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here.
So first off, how are you and your family holding up?
Everyone's doing swell. We really are.
So you have three generations in Cayuga and Onondaga County between you and your wife, you a son and a daughter, and grandchildren. How are they all holding up during this?
The grandchildren are more resilient and bounce back better than the adults do. The constant change, I think, once you hit about 18 years of age, unless you're causing the interruption, it's hard to adapt to. But the grandkids are doing great. We're all together over Labor Day in the swimming pool. And
so did you take initial precautions where, because you're a public figure, you're out and about, there were some public meetings you were going to, some that you were doing by Zoom, which I'm sure is your favorite mode of communication. I say sarcastically.
The technology is there. We're fortunate that with the technology today, we can do our Zoom meetings if necessary. City Council has continued to meet right from the beginning. Mr. Dygert, our city manager, had a Zoom call I believe it was every Monday and Wednesday for 2 or 3 months, talking with all the department heads, other employees who were critical, just talking, what's going on, what do you need, so forth and so on. But it's been a drastic change in our lifestyle. All of us, I think we crave the relationships with others, but we're getting through it.
So is the city taking steps to make sure that, well, I'm sure you are taking steps, let me rephrase that.
Sure.
How is the city taking steps to protect not only workers and your employees, but also those people who have to come to contact? Many people come up to the front cage,
right,
or used to come up to the front cage to pay their taxes or parking tickets or whatnot.
Within approximately the last month, we've reopened City Hall to a point. Everyone has to enter and exit through the rear door in the parking area. You're met there by an employee who take their temperature, ask you a series of questions. You need a photo ID, and then you're directed to whether you're going to the treasurer's office, engineering, or
so that's
whatever.
For everybody now. These are protocols.
Everyone has to do that, and the employees go in through a separate entrance, and basically we sign ourselves in. If we ask a series of questions that we read, and go about our business. In City Hall, once you're in City Hall, everyone is mandated to wear a mask, which we do. Council meetings are open to the public once again, but you also have to sign in if you're a non-employee.
So there was a period of time where you were doing just Zoom public meetings. Some councilors were in the room, some were not.
That's correct.
But right now you're back to normal on that. So how do you handle public be heard and all that?
As I say, people are allowed, the general public is allowed into the meetings. We have a public to be heard at the beginning of the meeting and also one at the end. So there's 2 public to be heard.
And are you getting many people to attend, or you think they're doing more by Zoom for those who can handle the technology?
I think they're doing more by Zoom, but the people that want to be there, other than employees, they've been coming for many, many years, and they're, I hate to say they're regulars there, but
Right.
basically they are.
Well, we also used to joke, there was a father and son that they said if we would serve beer and popcorn,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
could cover any deficit the city had at that time.
Absolutely.
So are other public meetings still, like planning, zoning, are all those meetings back into a cycle?
That I'm unaware, because as mayor and my fellow councilors, we try to stay away from the committee meetings. We feel we empower them to handle the meeting, so we back away from them and let them do it. If there's a problem or concern, up through the chain.
And you've been
committee
dealing with
comes
an
back.
apartment proposal on midway up South Street on the east side.
Correct.
You've bounced that back to the Historic Resources Advisory Board.
Correct.
From there. We'll shift gears, and we don't normally talk about national and state government here other than when it trickles down, but this is trickling down. So, and I know you're a supporter of the governor. He's endorsed you, you've endorsed him. How do you think he's handled the pandemic so far?
I'd have to give him a 98, 99%. I think he's done a remarkable job with what he's had to encounter. In my mind, if you look at New York State, New York City in the surrounding boroughs, they're like a state unto their own, and everything else, upstate Western New York, it's 2 different atmospheres. It's all the same state. I'm grateful I do not have his job, nor did I ever want that job, but I think he's done a remarkable job, and I believe the figures are showing it. The cases are down, and we got to
Under
handle
1% for
Correct.
20 plus weeks, or not weeks, wish it was weeks,
Yep.
days. What would you just gave a grade to the governor, how would you say Washington's response to the pandemic has been, whether it's either the president or both the president and Washington as a whole being the Congress?
a less than favorable position.
So and I ask that because there is some trickle down here.
Right.
So there has been concern for 5 months. It's been shown by other mayors. Ben Walsh has been at the forefront of this in Syracuse. Several others, I'm sure all of you, part of the New York Conference of Mayors,
Correct.
have been concerned about loss of revenue, whether it's
Yes.
sales tax or other funds. There's been a question about whether there'll be another stimulus package coming from Albany, from Washington, then trickling down. What are you telling, whether it's Congressman Katko or NICOM, what are the city's needs right here? Or is the city not that bad off right now?
Well, I would never say we're not that bad off, because then they're going to say we don't need it.
Right.
We're not just coming out of the orphan asylum, but we're holding our own.
Okay.
If it extends for a shutdown for much longer, it's going to become critical with our employees and everything that we're required to maintain.
And we'll slice and dice, and Jeff Dygert, the city manager, will be here at the end of the month. But as far as right now, you haven't even finished your first. Usually, when we have you on, you're at least through the first fiscal quarter
Yes,
of the year.
Yes.
Are things on track where what you're looking at as being sales tax and revenue, that is a very big variable for you?
Right. I don't want to say we're on track, but we're close.
Okay.
None of us, we're all concerned about it, the council, myself, our department as a city man, we're all concerned, but we're not in a panic mode as of right now.
So what happens if, because if you haven't noticed, there's a national election going on. It's mostly why you don't watch TV at this stage.
Or answer the telephone.
Or answer the telephone. What happens if the city, I know it happens to bigger cities.
Right.
I know it happens to Albany. We're going to talk in a minute. Albany's got starting in April, they had a 14.5 billion with a B deficit going in. What happens to some place like Auburn? What happens on that front?
It's tragic. Our biggest cost and our biggest resource are employees. Well, in my mind, and I'm not speaking for the council, only for Mike, we'd have to start looking at our employees. Where do we cut
So at this
back?
stage, you have not made cuts or layoffs?
None whatsoever.
Yeah. So I mentioned, so the governor is, and I just saw this a few minutes ago from city and state website, they said 14.5 billion, and the governor has basically divided the pot into 3 areas if he doesn't get federal aid. One are higher ed, that'd be this institution, and we'll have Brian Duran on in a couple of weeks, and he can bemoan and talk about that section. There's obviously schools, and Jeff Perizzolo will be here next Thursday to tell us how bad it is there. But the other is government aid to municipalities.
Yes.
And the worry is that you would get either a delayed payment, whether it's highway funds or reimbursement for the arterial or other funds. How worried are you about that at this stage?
It's always on the back of our mind. And I know Mr. Dygert has been working on contingency plans if this happens or if that happens, in which direction we should be going. I'm not at the panic stage yet, but it's always looming there, as to what we do.
So while all this
not to interrupt you, but
Go
I'm
ahead.
glad that I'm not Mr. Perizzolo or
Right.
the community college. Being a small city, that's enough problems, issues, but having a school district or community college, I don't know how they sleep at night.
Well, we'll be seeing if Mr. Perizzolo sleeps between now and then. But even while this is all going on, the city is moving forward with a number of projects.
Yes.
I drove on Seminary Ave yesterday, and I saw construction fencing
Yes.
up there for I call it the fire station, you call it the public safety
Public safety building is what
building.
it's commonly
So where do things stand right now?
I signed some contracts this morning, and I have to go back this afternoon and sign some more contracts for local labor and get everything started.
So when do you think, obviously the fencing's up, when do you think construction and everything will start?
I would say within a month there'll be
And any
boots on the
idea how
ground.
long it'll take to build?
Approximately a year.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
And what will go in there?
What will the PSB be?
Yeah, well, there was a discussion at one point about having the county move some of their operations over. Did that ever come to fruition?
We have not formalized anything. I know that's always a hope that they will go in there, but it will be the fire service, the administration, the fire service. There will be training areas, classrooms, to work with the surrounding departments or whatever is necessary.
And there was a discussion at one point, wasn't there, about bringing courts over there at some point early on?
It was talked about, but it got too far afield.
Okay.
So we're still, in my mind, we have our present fire station on Market Street. And in my mind, I would hope that the police move into a portion of it and maybe move the city court back to that area.
And that's where it was. If you go into City Council's conference room, there's pictures of the old courtroom, which was Market Street originally, north of Market.
And then when I started the fire department in '73, City Court was in the police station, where the records area is now.
So so there was a discussion at one point in regards to the Market Street Fire Department, whether police would move, and there is plans now to move further into the building, into the firehouse.
I would hope that there's no formalized plans. Everyone has a little bit of an idea, and then piecing it all together.
But there was a thought at some point to see if you could get a private developer to develop
condos.
Condos. I'm going to send your staff. I was in Cooperstown about 2 weeks ago. They have used an old fire area as their farmer's market, all enclosed. And is there still the idea that you might turn some of that over for private development, or you're not that far yet?
I think we will retain it within the
Control of city.
Control of the city.
So
not to interrupt you, but when you look at the building, it looks like it's a huge building. But if if you give a portion of it to the city police, that knocks it down considerably.
But the main reason to move out of there is partially heavy equipment, which everything else gets miniaturized and shrinks in this world, except for fire equipment.
Absolutely.
And that is the issue of the weight on the floors and the structure itself.
If you think about a 30-ton truck backing in as slow as it does, but when it stops, it vibrates. It goes back and forth a little bit, and that throws a lot of stress and strain on the floor. Plus, it's in a floodplain.
Right. So your hope is that you'll be in that by the fall of 2021.
Yeah, that is correct.
Staying on Market Street, if we can we go to North Street next door? Chief Sean Butler announced last month that he was going to retire. He's going to retire about a year from now. First of all, were you surprised by that?
I really was, yeah. Well, a lot of times
He came in while you were mayor.
he did.
Okay.
He did, yeah. It was quite a shock, but he's done a remarkable job. He's a remarkable man. But at the same time, you can see his deputy chief and his captains and lieutenants. He's passed that on down to them, and they're a well-oiled machine, and a lot to be proud of with Chief Butler.
So I want to talk about some things they've been working on in a second,
Sure.
but what will be the process to fill that vacancy?
It'll be a civil service.
So you have to pass civil service. Do you see that as being something that's, well, anybody can take the civil service test if you qualify for it, there are requirements.
Correct.
Do you see that this will be an internal search or an outside search or both?
I would hope that it's an internal search, or
Okay.
it's done internally. There again, it all depends on the criteria for the civil service exam, but I believe in promoting from within.
Were you also surprised that you've gone through a number of fire chiefs?
Mm-hmm.
Your fire chiefs are lasting about if I'm doing my math correctly, about 2-3 years. We've got a new Chief Ritz is there now.
Correct.
He came aboard. He joined the fire department, I think, when you were.
I was still there.
Still there. Why is there such turnover? Any particular reason?
I guess they threw away the mold with me.
Okay,
What
because you
can I
were
say?
chief how long?
13 years. I
Well,
think.
that's and it just
yeah.
seems like an awful lot on that.
You know, our society has changed quite a bit. It really has. Different ideas, what they want to do, may want to do, may not. Having families, maybe they want to take their credentials that they've earned, work for here, and go national with or statewide or whatever. So,
And a number of your successors have, Mr. Winslow's in the next county doing some stuff. Another chief went down south. They've done something else in fire and safety somewhere else.
Absolutely.
And there are some, let's be blunt, there are some labor incentives in contracts built in for both police and fire to retire earlier than later.
It's a young person's job. It is, both the police and fire. It's a young person.
So one of the things that Chief Butler has been very involved with right now has been this issue of Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And we have been lucky enough not to have the violence or the disputes that have occurred in what's happening in Rochester right now, what's been happening in Kenosha and other places. What has he done or has the city done particularly to address, or hasn't it need to address the Black Lives Matter issues?
Chief Butler, I could talk all day long on what he's accomplished. Personally, I believe one of the best things that we did with Chief Butler is we sent him to the FBI Academy for, I believe it's all police chiefs, sheriffs, whatever, for a month. He came back with a lot of ideas. He's a hands-on type individual, but only in the regard that he wants to sit down with you, talk face to face, and find out what's on your mind.
So on that note, and I hope
Yeah.
we'll interview him at some point when we
I-
open up a little bit more here. Do you think that I remember going by the first event that happened in front of, in Market
Heritage
Street Park.
Okay, Mark.
Chief Anthony, Assistant Chief Anthony were there. I know there were some national photos that made the national news. Do you think his being there and just that type of personality diffused a lot of the complaints?
I do. There was a march the week before that went down East Genesee Street, and they were also present there. But Chief Butler was there, Deputy Chief Anthony, and many members of the department were there. But they weren't there trying to quell an unfortunate situation. They were there to talk with the people, to get to know the individuals and try to get them to know the police officers also. It's a two-way street. You have to work together in regards to it.
So in that particular area, are there things that City Council is looking that, and I know some councilors attended some of the marches and events. I don't know if you did.
I attended the event at the Heritage Center
At the
the
Heritage
following
Center.
week.
In doing this, are there things that the City Council is looking at besides personnel, and we'll get to that in a second because you're offering another test again.
Right.
Are there policy directives that the City Council is looking at?
In regards to the police and
Well,
fire?
unless, to the issues that have come up about police procedure and Black Lives Matter,
Chief-
diversity.
Chief Butler has a good working relationship with myself, council, and the city manager, and it's a two-way street. The Chief Butler is open to suggestions as well as open to saying, hey, Mike, you should be doing this, or let's look at that, or the city manager. It's a two-way street. We all learn and feed off each other.
Yeah, I mentioned staffing. It seems like a cyclical issue for
Yes.
the city. You are having another police exam again. Is it just tough to get people to apply for these exams, and why?
I do not think that the I want to say the criteria or whatever you bring to the table is that far out of bounds. But in this day and age, folks don't want to do that. They see what's going on.
And it's not indicative of just the city of Auburn.
No,
This is
no.
all,
Countrywide, as far as I
you know, whether it's volunteers at fire departments, it's police officers, sheriff's deputies.
Keep in mind also that the civil service list, which a person has to be hired from, is 2 years initially. Then they can have 2 one-year extension. So at the end of 4 years, your list, whether you have no one on the list or you have 100 people eligible, it's done.
So we talked a little bit about the fire station as part of the DRI, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. How much is the fire station roughly costing?
Oh, I could take a stab at it. I don't want to at this
But
point.
the $10 million has been on the table for the DRI. You were awarded it 2 years ago. At this stage, what were some of the projects besides the fire station, public safety building?
There was some work to be done down the area of the Cougar Museum.
In Schweinfurt, okay.
Schweinfurt.
Got to do some public art. There was the Auburn
Public art.
Public Theater.
There were the old Holy Family Convent on
Next
Chapel
ride.
Drive. That was going to be converted into some sort of.
So there's been a question about money from
Yeah.
Albany, because the governor has,
Yeah.
Again, back to this $14.5 billion.
Right.
He started to freeze some money in some contracts.
Right.
So with that being said, are all the projects, you're on this DRI
DRI
board,
yep.
committee, are they all still moving forward?
Absolutely.
Okay,
A-
so,
keep in mind too that the owner of the building, the occupancy, has to have skin in the game first.
so if they
before
come
it's
to you and say, we can't do this, or we have to postpone, that's when the city will reassess, not,
Yep.
you're not arbitrarily
No.
taking money away from
No,
people at this
no.
stage.
And there has to be a whole lot of skin in the game.
And I think
on
at Auburn
individual.
Public Theater, they've opened up their cafe.
yes.
So that project is nearly complete on
Yep.
there. You're also on the Regional Economic Development Council, better known as the Red Sea.
Let's see.
Every year there's been I know some people call it the Hunger Games, but there's been awards every year. Is there going to be awards this year, or has the governor put a kibosh on this?
I don't know.
So you haven't met
no,
right now
no,
and scheduled in?
no, I have nothing on that.
Speaking of downtown, just during the pandemic, the city temporarily held off on giving parking tickets downtown. Are you back to ticketing violators now?
We discussed it last week at council meeting, and I believe it's a 1 week or 2 week warning to individuals that we're going to go back, start ticketing, but we're going to be giving out courtesy tickets or notifications somehow. if
You
you're
can
parking
still,
on the-
though, even after this period of time, you still get some, was it up to 2 hours of free parking in the loop?
in the garage.
And
for
you're
free.
still trying to drive people into that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and there will be some construction going on there, but that was part of the plan we had a fire there a year ago, Memorial Day. We just awarded the bids within the last week, so they will start rebuilding what was damaged by the fire. But part of that plan was new exit and entrance during the construction.
Oh, okay.
But it will be open.
One other thing in that, I think I'm making this linear unintentionally. South Street, you awarded bids last week?
Yes, we did.
$7 million project. What will be done?
The widening of 34 in that area, new lighting, street lighting, streetscapes, sidewalks.
So the last big I was trying to figure out, the last big project was most likely 25 years ago, because you had a project a couple of years ago and state funding disappeared.
Right. And then we hit them up again, and we finally got
So
it
the
back.
local sheriff, I looked at the math correctly from what Kelly at the Citizen said, It's about 900,000, 899
Yeah.
is the local share. The rest will be covered by federal and state money.
That's correct. That's correct.
When do you see that being started?
Almost immediately.
How about being finished?
Not quite as quick.
No, 'cause that's-
I can't give you an end date on that.
So today, we only have a minute or two, and I've got a whole lot of other questions, but I do not want to miss out on this. Today's your media day of sorts. You also taped a PSA, public service
Yes,
announcement this morning on the census.
that's correct.
What are you telling people?
Complete your census form. We need it. We need to know. We need to know that have the federal government know how many people live in our community. That helps us with grants, many other items. But it comes down.
We're
to
talking about
money.
billions of dollars. It comes to states and how.
Absolutely.
So Auburn is not doing badly. I only say that because I happen to be the chair of the complete count, and that's why I'm pushing this. So New York State has a response rate of about 61.7% right now. That's as of
What is
Friday.
the deadline on that?
The end of the month.
End of the
so
month,
you,
okay.
And we have enumerators out there. But the city, in some areas of the city, you're doing really well.
Yes.
70.6%, 70.6% on the east end. But there are areas in the west side of the city where the numbers are in their 40s. Is the city doing anything to try to reach out to that besides PSAs and things like that?
We're very limited resource of what we can do, how to push it. We can mention the council meeting, but the same people that will not fill out it's even online. You can fill it out online. They're not going to listen, and they don't feel it affects them or it doesn't help.
But you and Aileen McNabb-Coleman, the chair of the Cuyahoga County Legislature,
Right.
are doing a joint effort to get the word out.
That's correct.
To fill out. And there are numerators that are coming out. There are 10 questions.
Yeah.
You filled it out, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Well, wife and I did it online not too long ago.
And you know, it's where you're born, do you own your house, things like that. It's 10 questions. It's not invasive.
No.
But this is about how the city gets money, whether it's for school districts or for other projects that the city of Auburn is doing.
Exactly.
Mayor.
On a personal note, my hobby is my genealogy. And thank God we have all of those old papers that we can pour through and find out who your great-grandfather was or where they lived.
But we've got about 2 weeks to get,
we have to get going.
We do, because at the end, you know, it goes without saying, the federal government was going to go into the end of October. They did not. State government was going to give Cuyahoga County more money. They cut it in half, so you'll see PSAs, whether it's on WCNY, Finger Lakes Radio Group, social media, but we do urge people to go out and fill out their forms.
Absolutely. And if you can't get it done, call the mayor's office. We'll do everything we can to assist you in getting it complete. But it is important and crucial.
It's vital.
We need you.
We want to thank our first guest of the semester, Mayor Quill. We hope you'll be back soon.
I'll be back whenever you ask me.
And hope you and your family stay healthy and safe.
Very good. Thank you. Same to you.
So a little bit of housekeeping business before we leave. Our next show will be on on Thursday. We're going to have the executive director of the Central New York Make-A-Wish Foundation, Diane Kupperman, who will be here on Thursday to talk about their September 12th drive-in on the Wild Side event at the Finger Lakes Drive-In. Next week, we'll hear from Cuyahoga County's Public Health Director, Kathleen Cuddy, who will give us an update on COVID-19 activities in the county and just a general public health update. As we said, we'll be back on Thursday of next week with Auburn Superintendent of Schools, Jeff Parazzo. He'll be talking to us about Auburn schools and the start of their new year and their hybrid system of learning options. Future guests in September hopefully will include State Senator James Seward, who's not seeking re-election. Cuyahoga County Legislator Trish Kerr will be here to give a census update. City Manager Jeff Dugart will be here for a city update as well. And starting in the week of October 8th, we are starting a series of candidate forums as we always do. We hope to bring you the candidates for the 24th Congressional Congressional District. That's a rematch between John Cacco and Dana Balter. We have two open Senate seats, the 51st being vacated by Senator Seward. The 50th Senate seat is open due to the resignation of first-term Senator Bob Antonacci. And then we have the 54th Senate District with incumbent Pamela Helming. We also have an opening for the 126th Assembly District, first time in 20 years, with the retirement of Assemblyman Gary D. Finch, and the 130th Assembly District, now held by Assemblyman Brian Matlow, will also be here for a forum as well. I'll moderate those. Jeremy Boyer, as always, the executive editor of The Citizen, will be asking the questions. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send us your questions and thoughts for future guests for Inside Government and Beyond the Front Page. You can send them to cozguytho@aol.com or by sending them to Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for CU Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you stay safe. Have a great night, and we will see you back in the studio on Thursday.